All right, welcome back everybody to Altcoin Daily, where you subscribe for a video on the cryptocurrency market every day. My name's Austin. We have a lot of news to talk about, including Craig Wright has officially lost his court case. A judge has ordered him to pay $5 billion in Bitcoin to the Kleiman estate. Now, many people have called Craig Wright a fraud for years, and at least in one aspect, a judge is now saying that they're right, which is nothing new. But what is new is I have the very first interview that Craig Wright gave right after the judge made this decision. We can see exactly what Craig Wright is feeling. He's already talking about dumping on the market. I want to make sure you're clued into all of this. But the main thing that I want to bring to your attention is, well, I guess not so much leaked audio, but just a piece of audio from a podcast that not a lot of people are talking about. This is in reference to the OTC market, but more specifically, institutional investors. Because institutional investors is something that we hear about, we hope about, but what's the truth? Well, I found this audio that's relatively recent that's from a podcast that's focused on Bitcoin and focused on Austrian economics. Did you catch it? And on this podcast, they interview this man right here, which is Plan B. And you might know Plan B better from his Bitcoin stock to flow model. And it's not, this is just a hypothesis. This is just a model right now. But for the last 2 years, it's been pretty accurate in determining what the price of Bitcoin should be when Bitcoin was only a few cents to now Bitcoin being only a few $1,000s based on the stock, the supply of Bitcoin, to the flow, the faucet of Bitcoin, that the limited supply that gets halved at every halvening. Anyways, you know this. You like this. You've seen this. Today, what I want to talk about is what's on this podcast, which is about the man who is Plan B. And this whole thing, it really chock full of a lot of information. I'm going to leave this whole link down below. Check this out for yourself. But the first thing I want to point out comes at around the 1 minute mark, where Plan B is a pseudonym. We don't really know who this guy is, but he gives a full 1 minute long breakdown on exactly what his background is and why he sort of has the acumen, the knowledge, what he brings to the Bitcoin space. Check this out.
Nice, very fitting, very fitting. So obviously I know you're a pseudonymous account, so I don't want you to dox yourself, but maybe just a little bit of background, whatever you're comfortable to share, perhaps just, that you work in finance.
Sure, no problem. Okay, I have a background in legal and economics, and I worked all my life in traditional finance, and mainly with a focus on quantitative investing, quant investing, so analyzing models and investments, and also structured finance, so asset-backed securities, residential mortgage-backed securities, and collateralized debt obligations. So in short, the financial engineering part of an institution. And currently, I work for an institutional investor as an investment manager. Where we have a big balance sheet, multi-billion-dollar balance sheet, and I analyze, model, and source assets for them. The reason to be anonymous is except apart from OPSEC reasons, maybe also that I would like to focus on data and facts and logic, and it shouldn't matter who I am for that discussion.
All right. Obviously, a very smart guy. He obviously has the pedigree to be able to talk quantitative analysis, easing, stock to flow models, and he believes, and he's made this very clear, not on the exact day of the next halving, but he does believe the price of one Bitcoin will reach $50,000 by/probably right after the next halving, and only go up from there. I mean, this has been pretty accurate for the last 2 years. So if you just want to know about price, I encourage you to watch the first half of this podcast. What I want to take you to is to about 21 minutes into this podcast, where he answers my question from his perspective. Is it true that institutional money, like we hear about, is institutional money actually coming into the space? Check this out.
And if we go into the future, next halving, May 2020, the model value jumps to $50,000 US dollars per Bitcoin.
Whoops. Actually, what I want to take you to is, that was about the price of where we should be by the next halving. I want to take you to about minute 45, where he talks about institutional money. Check this out.
Okay, and I think another interesting kind of meme that's been going around in the community, and this was something that went around particularly in 2017, was this whole, oh, institutional money is coming. And that was, that was one of the, I guess, ideas rapidly flying around. And on the counter side of that, some detractors might say, oh, look, so much of the volume is fake, and maybe Tether is fractional reserving, and that is what's driving the volume and the price rise. Do you have any thoughts on that idea that, oh, the volume is fake and Tether is driving it?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, especially because I'm an institutional investor. Yeah, I think some institutional investors really get it on C-level, like Fidelity. I think that's a very good example. But actually, I don't see much banks and insurance companies that have to deal with a central bank capital regime like Basel or Solvency. I don't see them invest in Bitcoin very soon. Um, so if you look beyond the C level at banks and insurance companies and institutional investors, say at a dealing room where the traders are, or the quants, or even the young employees, then I see a lot of interest and a lot of buying too. So yeah, I think the institutional money is coming meme. Yes, I hope we do, and I'm also personally working towards that. I'd like to be a bridge between Bitcoin and the traditional institutional money, but we have a long way to go.
All right. So that's the truth. At least that's the truth. Keep in mind, this was a few months ago, and that's from his perspective. And he is an institutional investor, and he says that he's buying. But from what he's hearing in the space behind the scenes, he says that he's seeing the on ramps open up. He's seeing that the ways to get into Bitcoin on an institutional level are opening up, but he really hasn't seen the new money come in institutionally yet, which is his perspective. But what was interesting to me, which was the second part, which is what you just heard, which he mentions the money that he does see. And I quote, he's seeing the traders on the dealing room floor and the young employees. Right now, they seem to be the ones who are scooping up Bitcoin. So, what do you think? I mean, in my opinion, this kind of backs up what we've been talking about. I think the new money isn't here yet, and especially with Bakkt and Ledger X, and of course Fidelity, which he mentioned, I think it's going to be more of a slow trickle starting now, starting a month ago, starting in a month from now. I think it's going to be more of a slow trickle than just a huge rush to get into Bitcoin. But I thought it was interesting. Interesting perspective. Let me know what you think. Guys, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you want daily updates on the space. If I find more of these things, obviously, I'm going to bring them to you because this helps me just as much as it helps. Oh, yeah. And one more thing I want to point out, and it was interesting because what he said at the end of that podcast, when he asked, the podcaster asked the question, okay, so if Bitcoin gets to $50,000, and this will only keep getting up as Bitcoin's flow gets less and less, but Bitcoin getting to a $1 trillion market cap, or the market cap of gold to the $7 trillion market cap, where is that money going to come from? And in that podcast, he basically said the same thing that he wrote on March 22nd, where he sees the money that's going to start to flow into Bitcoin. It's going to start from stealing some of the market cap from silver and gold. That's where we'll start to see the trickle. We're going to continue to see the trickle from countries with negative interest rates, Europe, Japan, US. And then we're going to start to see the trickle of billionaires and millionaires that are hedging their bets, and I think we're already starting to see some of this, hedging their bets against quantitative easing. So check it out. Moving on, next piece of news. This was broken by Peter McCormick, although some people down here say it was broken by others first. Craig Wright has lost his case against Ira Kleiman. Kleiman is awarded 50% of Craig Wright's intellectual property and 50% of Craig Wright's Bitcoin that has been mined. The judge has rejected Craig S. Wright's testimony and finds that he perjured himself with falsified documents. We have the very first interview after Craig was ordered to pay $5 billion in Bitcoin. And if you're wondering how this case all began, Just a reminder, the case began in 2018 when Kleiman, the brother of Wright's late business partner, Dave Kleiman, who died, the brother of that guy sued Craig Wright for $10 billion, alleging that Wright was trying to seize Dave's Bitcoin holdings. And the judge just said, yeah, Wright, you were trying to seize those holdings. And immediately after the sentencing, or whatever you call it, Modern Consensus spoke to Wright by telephone yesterday, just as he left the Florida courtroom. Modern Consensus said, hey, how you doing? Craig Wright said, been better. I'll just ask, what does today's ruling actually mean for Bitcoin and crypto? The judge won't rule on whether I'm Satoshi, but the partnership is. So when Dave Kleiman passed, the partnership transferred to IRA. And this is what I want to clarify, because I've been seeing some comments where people saying, whoa, if Craig Wright has to pay everything he owned back before 2013, that means Craig Wright is claiming to own those original Satoshi wallets. Craig Wright has to pay half of all that too. And I just want to clarify that this case, neither side, the Kleimans or Craig Wright, was trying to disprove that he is Satoshi. This case wasn't really about that. This case was about Satoshi's Bitcoins, the Bitcoins that were mined in those early years. Will this affect Bitcoin SV? According to Craig Wright, BSV, it won't. But the judge has ordered me to send under 500,000 Bitcoin over to IRA. Once IRA gets this Bitcoin, let's see what it does to the market. I wouldn't have tanked the market, Craig Wright says. I'm nice. But he's saying that IRA, he's spreading FUD about IRA, saying that since he isn't involved directly like Craig is in the crypto space, Bitcoin SV, IRA wants the money. And he's probably going to dump some of that money on the market. And specifically, he gives the reason saying that IRA is going to have to pay taxes on this Bitcoin that he's about to get. He is going to have to sell some of the Bitcoin. This is what Craig's saying. And he goes on to say that now that the courts have determined that legally IRA has inherited that $5 billion worth of Bitcoin, he now has to pay a state tax on it, which, wow, yep, exactly, $2 billion in cash, 40%. So Craig Wright is spreading FUD right now that because IRA doesn't care about Bitcoin, he's about to dump $2 million worth of Bitcoin to pay those taxes. I mean, do you believe him? I mean, Craig is trying to paint this picture that IRA doesn't care about Bitcoin at all. He just wants the cash. But IRA, just like Dave, I mean, this is just my opinion. He's been around. He's been around with Bitcoin since the Satoshi days with Craig Wright. So I think he obviously sees the value in Bitcoin. But it might be a possibility. I mean, it might dump. As I get more information, I'm going to let you know. Let me know what you think. Guys, that's the video for today. My name's Austin, and like always, I'll see you tomorrow.